if you really have the intention of, raising a child, don't let that scare you. Just understand that part of the Black experience as it is today is
Yeah.
that they will experience racism. They will experience, and it is, I'm not saying it's okay, but like that's how it is, and
It's going to happen. I'm
going to
sorry.
have to, that's part of their life. That's the
Yeah.
trial that we as Black people get to have on our shoulders. So you just have to be okay with that and understand that like that's what you're signing up for, is helping your child cope with that. Just give them a solid sense of self-esteem.
Hello, Tanisha.
Hello.
How are you? Talk to me.
I'm
How's your
so good.
day?
I'm so good. I just got back from the gym and ate breakfast.
Ow. Me
Yeah.
sat here having not been to the gym in like a month, like wish I never asked.
I go every day, but honestly, I've gone every day since I was 15, and I'm still chunky, so it doesn't matter. like you know what I mean? It's just like I do it because I like it. No,
Yeah, well,
no shame on anybody who doesn't want to go to the gym. Don't go.
yes. Firstly, thank you. That's for me. Secondly, I bet your heart is like for
Yeah.
real, and my
Yeah.
heart is weak. I run up the stairs, and my heart's like, you need to relax. This is not a game you should be playing. So, yes, thank you for joining me today. I'm very, very interested in this episode. When you sent me a message, I was like, ooh, with the good content. Yeah. So, thank you very much. Let's get
Thank
stuck
you.
in. What
Yeah.
was your experience as a Black child being adopted into a white family? Talk to me about it.
Well, I mean, it's like a loaded question because I don't know anything different. And
Yeah,
so
true.
and so for me, like there's things that I didn't realize until I was older, for sure. Like growing up, people would always like ask us like, "Oh, where is she adopted from? Did you get her from Africa?" You know what I mean? Like I was like a puppy, right? Like they're like,
Oh my God.
where did you get your baby? We want one." You know what I mean?
Where did you pick her up?
Yeah, so
That's
people would do
crazy.
that, and my parents got creative about, sassy responses and things,
Oh, I love that.
like, I remember my dad is just crazy, and, like, there are so many things I love and miss about him because we're no contact. I
Okay,
am
you
no
just,
contact with him,
yeah,
for a lot of reasons, but, I remember when I was a kid, like,
yeah.
the US Census worker came to visit our house, and he convinced the US Census worker that there was a recessive gene in our family, and that's why I was Black. And nobody else was. He's like, "Yeah, we have this
It
weird
happens.
recessive gene." And the guy was like totally going for
Was
it.
he into it? Like, oh my God, that's so crazy. I heard about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're sat there like, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, like what is this? So, yeah, it was just that experience of I didn't really come to realize, like I didn't know I was Black until it was brought up to me. Like I knew I was Black, but I didn't know what that meant. Like so the first
Interesting.
time, right, like I just was like, yes, my skin is this color, just like hair is this color, you know.
Oh, it was just a matter of fact. I am brown, and this
Mhm.
is just my life. But it wasn't a case of like the context behind like what it means to be Black and the fact that like
Yeah.
your parents are. It's just this is just how I look, and that's fine.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it was that way for a good, few years of my childhood, and then, I remember the first time I really realized what that meant was the first time I experienced racism, which was
Oh
at
Jesus. Okay.
preschool. Yeah,
From who? From the children?
the children, yeah.
What
There
did the
was a little
children
girl.
do?
It was really just one little girl. So I remember I was little and I wanted to play with these kids, and there was a
Mm.
group of kids where this girl was like the leader. Like she was like,
The mini Regina George.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was like, I want to play with you guys at recess. How come I can't play with you? How come you guys always like go off? And she's like, you're too brown. I can't play with you because you're too brown. And like, luckily it turned into a whole thing. Like my teacher, like, it was kind of embarrassing. I don't know if this was the right way to handle it, but she handled it, right? She put me in front of the class and she was like, Tanisha is just like you. Like,
Oh,
you cannot. And she like reamed the class. She was like, nobody gets to tell her that she can't play because she's brown.
Aww.
Like, you know what I mean? And she like had a whole
That
conversation.
teacher, she reminds me of one of those teachers in like Coach Carter. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That you like do documentaries about. Like
Mm-hmm.
get someone to play her for real. Get what's that woman that did that other one? Hilary Swank. Get Hilary Swank to play her.
We need Hillary Swank up in here.
Yes,
Yeah.
but that's so sweet, but also like a little bit intense, I feel.
Yeah.
To like
For a
be at the front of
4-year-old.
the class, like
Mm-hmm. For a 4-year-old, and I remember like I remember it because it was traumatic. Like I
yeah,
remember.
you remember trauma.
Yeah, and I remember like just going home, and I remember I think the teacher called my parents, and my dad was very upset about this, and
Yeah.
he was like, "No, you're so special," like, you know, and he kind of talked to me about what that he had to have the racism talk with me, and I don't think he was prepared to have that conversation with me at 4 years old,
At 4, I don't
you
think
know,
anybody. Well, in the world that we're in today, I feel like everybody needs to be prepared for everything. I had a
right?
child ride past me on a scooter. I don't remember how old I was, but it's just funny now. But he rode past me on a scooter. He was a little white boy, and he was like, "Nigger," and then just rode off.
Oh no, sorry,
And I was like,
happened to me, but also it's like from a little
literally,
kid.
and then went home, and I told I was like, "Mom." So I was outside, and the little boy from round the way, he called me a nigger, and then my mum was kind of like, because the scenario was so funny that he just scooted away into the night.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he didn't even look back. He just wanted to make his name and then run off.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the first time. And even then I was like, what does that even mean? But that I wasn't 4. I was like a fully formed child. So to explain that to a 4-year-old is a little bit harrowing, I feel.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when it came to the hair thing, when was the first time you realized that, like, oh, this is going to be a whole situation? Like, when was like your first experience of dealing with your hair where you were like, oh,
that's like a good question, because like when I was a kid, okay, I was such a shit. I feel so bad for my mother. Like she would, I mean, I could say I'm tender-headed, but also I'm like,
yeah,
wow, I was out of control. Like if she would like try to brush my hair, I would turn around and hit her. I would smack her. I'd be like, "Don't you touch my hair!" Like I just like, I didn't like it when she would brush my hair, and
yes,
obviously like for a white parent, it was hard for her to figure out how to take care of my hair, what products
yes.
to use. It's the 90s in Utah, okay? We don't even have in Utah now, we have a whole section, a whole aisle for black hair in
Yes.
Walmart. Okay, that's a big deal for us because when I was a kid, we didn't have that black hair products or curly hair products, I should say.
No,
Not
that wasn't.
they were not in regular stores. You had to go to special stores. You had to go to like a black store, a black salon to get them. And I remember this started when I was like 2 and 3. She would like brush my hair, and she started taking me to see black hairstylists when I was like
Yeah,
2 and 3 years old. I've had my hair getting braided since I was 2 or 3.
yeah,
And now I do my own, but it was way back then, that young, and you
yeah.
know, my mom would try to learn from the stylist of how to like take them out
Oh,
and how to she did her best, but I was such a hellion to try. So it just turned into her taking me to the hair salon
to
and
just be
letting them
like,
do it.
you
Yeah,
do it.
because I wouldn't hit the hairstylist. I would actually
Oh
sit
no.
and I think my mom was like pretty gentle. Actually, I don't think it was that bad. It's just because the experience, like it turned into this like power struggle almost.
Yeah, I get it. Where you were like, I know you're vulnerable here.
I was a brat. And I was
No, it's
smacking
fine. I think
her.
also that's part of the culture thing because I remember a time where I think it was my grandma. This is the grandma that actually really loves me. I had a grandma that was the ghetto, but
Mhm,
like this other grandma, she was
mhm,
really sweet. But even her, there was one time where I think I was just shuffling because I was like, this is uncomfortable and there's
mhm,
games to be played, you know. And I saw a
mhm.
park around the corner and there was this like firm where I was like, oh, okay,
Yeah, yeah. Like
okay.
if you try to move in this one, they're like moving your head back
Like,
here, smacking the hands, or like.
yes, exactly. And I think there may be something, tell me if I'm wrong, about number one, you don't really do that in I'd say a lot of white cultures, like the concept of hitting and beating. It's just not really the go-to. Like, I know I've been in shopping centers. Black people have been like handling their kids, and I always find it really fascinating to find like the closest white woman to like see her response, and they're all like that horrified. But for me, I'm like, standard. Ain't nothing changed. That child's about to get beaten here and at home. So I think because that was not the culture of your family, there was never going to be like a duff in the head. And as a result, you could take control of the situation. And
and my mom is small. My mom is a tiny person. So like I'm a big person. Like I am like my mother is 4'7".
It doesn't
Like
work.
My mother
like,
is
you're not going to win.
4'7".
Wait. 4 foot what?
Yeah. My mom, she's not like a, I don't think she would be considered, or maybe.
Are you sure? I was like, what?
She's a small person, but she's not like, she doesn't have dwarfism. She doesn't have.
Oh, I see. She's just little in height.
Yes. And she's skinny, but she's not like, she's not like, she doesn't have the dwarfism features.
No.
And so she's just very small. And so for me, like when I got up to 4 and 5 and 6, I was like, go be bigger than
Come on then. What is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're at like you're at 4 and you've had to have the racism chat. And that's pretty stressful. And then you've been getting your hair done by hairstylists from maybe about 2 or 3. Okay. Now talk to me about how you learnt about your hair, because I understand you probably spoke to the hairstylist, but did you have like a revelation moment where you kind of like had to do some serious searching and seeking about your natural hair? Because I feel like some stylists I've been to haven't really given me like that much education. They kind of just tell me the top level and do my hair and send me on my way. Anything deeper, I have to either find myself or go to my family.
I think it might be, like I think out here too, like I don't know, in Utah there's a lot of like, there is a big faith community out here, and there's a lot of people that just do adopt. Like whether, I don't know if there's a moral thing around it, and there's also like people struggle with infertility and things like that, and so people adopt for various reasons, but Utah has a very large number of adoptions, and very large like community of Black adopted children to white families.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
It's a whole other conversation.
I was like, that must be like, is that good? Because then I guess all the adopted Black kids have each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. It's not, I would say it's neutral, because in general, at least in the United States, statistically, like there are more Black children in the foster care and adoption system anyway. Like they're overrepresented. Like there are white children, but like compared to the populations, when you take the whole white population, you take how many of their children are up for adoption, it would be less percentage wise than the amount of Black people in America and the number of their children for adoption. So that puts it in perspective. And then you don't even count like intra-country adoptions as well. But so I feel like these salons out here are like kind of prepared for it, because they know these families kind of just like don't really know what to do. And so they're kind, and they, they'll help educate. But for me, I started learning about my hair like when I was old enough to start taking care of it. Like my parents would take me to the salon, and then I think when I was like a teenager, like older, like 17, like when I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna have to figure this out, because I'm gonna have to like take my own hair and like figure this out. So I actually started like learning about my hair when I went off to college. So I went to college.
Is that 18?
Yeah, like, well, even though I think I was older than that, because I went off to college, but I was still, my parents were still helping me out. I didn't start learning how to do it until I was like 21 or 22.
Jesus. And how are you learning? It's not your fault, sweetheart. I'm just shook up. And how are you learning how to actually do it?
YouTube, because I moved to Idaho, and it's an even whiter place, and there's even less people that know how. Like in Utah, there was like 2 or 3 solid salons.
At least.
In Idaho, there's one person inside of a salon that I could find, and I was like, "You're okay, but I don't know how much trust I have, because you're the only person." And so I learned, on YouTube, Brianna Rutter. Girl, you tell me how to get it. I'm like, Brianna Rutter, if you're out there listening. I watched her videos. and I sucked. Okay, you can ask my husband. We were dating at the time. I was like trying to get cuticle hair and trying to braid. It looks so bad. It looks so bad. But
We've
I
all
got
been
better.
there.
We've all done it. We've all done our hair, and
Yeah, and
it
it
was
just
bad.
looked mash up. And you'll start
Hmm.
looking, you're scrolling back on YouTube like trying to see the step you missed and realize you did every step, you just did every step wrong from the first
Yeah.
one.
Well, and I had a hard time figuring out grip. So even this, like, these are
Grip
knotless.
is hard. Grip is
Yeah,
difficult. Okay.
yeah. And
It's
I
not
did
you.
these. These are knotless, and I just did these like not too
No,
long
girl,
ago.
it looks good. Progression.
Yes, exactly. So, but usually I use the rubber band method, like using a
Girl.
crochet hook or,
Yeah.
sometimes I don't. It just depends on what it is. But I learned how to cornrow, I learned how to detangle. I learned how to do all of that.
So YouTube really actually did help. Let's be real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
YouTube is a university. And at this point, at this point in time, I feel like, back in the early 2000s, it was a little harder to find this content.
Yeah, it was.
Nowadays, I'm like, if you adopt a child and you can't figure out how to do their hair and you're too lazy to go on YouTube, this is a you problem. Right? It is a you problem. If you are, I'm like, sorry, mom shaming here. If you adopt
Yeah.
a black child and you cannot figure out how to do their hair and you come in to see me in the middle of a Walmart and you're asking
Yes.
me, how did you do your hair? Who does your hair? Every time, and you know that you have a cell phone in your pocket with YouTube on it, you're stupid. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry, but
No, I
you're
agree.
like, I'm
I'd
like, dude,
actually be really like pissed off if somebody approached me in the middle of my shopping day and was like,
people do it a lot.
"Excuse me, I've adopted one of you, okay,
Yeah.
and I'm really struggling with. I'm stopped right there, sis. You need to get out my face. Like, what? Why did you do that? That's actually a valid point. Whose responsibility do we think this is? Let's be real. Because even your parents, okay, you're adopting a black child. Do you think it's not crossed their mind? Because I know there's white friends of mine and colleagues and people I've met where they don't really get it. Like they don't, the hair thing, for example, they don't really get
Hmm.
it. They know it's different, obviously, they have eyes and they're fascinated by it, but that's it. They think about it and then it goes out of their head. I don't know
Hmm.
whether people that are not of color, or more importantly, more black people that aren't black, I don't think they get how important it is. Because then in my head, I'm like, why would you adopt a black child if you hadn't done the research beforehand and been prepared and know that you have to have products and tools and stuff? But then I'm like, is that the adoption agency's responsibility? Like, whose job is that? Because I feel like it's someone's job before the child
At
goes
the
into
end
that
of the day, right? But at the end of the day, it's kind of interesting to me because I was like, even if you like, say you're white and you have biological children, you would
yeah,
never let your child walk around with matted
yeah,
hair
it's true.
that hasn't been brushed or combed. You know, you
Never.
wouldn't really do that. Maybe you're having a power struggle one day and you let that happen. But I'm just saying, like,
Day
you're
to
gonna try to
day.
figure it out. Like,
Yeah.
and it's not that hard. I think people think of it as so different, like we're an animal, and that's the problem because it's actually
Yes.
curly hair. Curly hair is in all sorts of races. It's in all people, and
It
at the end of
is.
the day, it's just curly hair, and all you need to help curly hair is water.
Yeah.
Quit trying to brush your hair. Like I think with straight hair, people brush their hair wet to dry.
Dry.
So
Yeah.
they'll try to brush it until it's dry. You can't use that strategy with curly hair. You have to brush it while it's wet and then you never
Yes.
let it dry out, right? Like you let it stay damp. You don't.
Exactly. But you should learn, I think you should learn that. Like, I don't know whether it's just because I feel like, I hate the word, but I feel like I'm somewhat woke. Okay. But I would be really overly aware. Say I was adopting a Chinese child. Listen, I would be in every group, Googling every this, historical context. What do I need to know about blah, 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 on Google to make sure when the child came, I was like ready to go. So I could
Hmm.
like connect and I wouldn't have them like feel da 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 da. So in my head, I'm
Hmm.
like, why is that not a thing? Like I personally feel like as a white parent adopting a black child, look at what courses there are. Speak to the hair salons before you have that child, because that could actually impact whether you choose to adopt the child. The level
Yeah.
of maintenance it takes about skincare, hair care, culture, all of these things could actually make you feel like maybe I'm not ready for this. So I find it weird that then a lot of parents maybe aren't doing that and learning as
Yeah.
they go at the child's expense.
Yeah. And I will give credit. Like I do
Yeah.
think so many people know. But I do think there is kind of an issue where, and I think it's because of just the nature of, I guess, I don't like calling it this, but like whiteness and understanding that
Yeah.
when you're white, you don't necessarily think about your race every day. And you're not
Yeah.
forced to, you're not confronted with it because I think now more than used to be, for sure, because everybody's becoming more, like, as you say, woke or
Woke.
aware.
Yeah.
And but I think back when I was adopted, really, white people were not confronted with like what
Yeah.
their race is
It's
and what
true.
it means because the experience, right? Like for me, I'm like forced to confront it at 4 years old because somebody brings it up to me. And they mean well. They're like, I don't really see color, right? And you're like, okay, but they're like, no, like I'm gonna adopt any child of any color and they're just going to
Yeah.
be just like me.
It's just
and
it's like
and there's
naive, a little naive, I think.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
they're a little bit like afterwards, they're like, oh,
yeah, like they start to realize, like when their child starts to experience racism, they're like, oh, or when their child starts to, when they start trying to do their child's hair, they're like, oh, I didn't realize this was going to be that
yeah,
different. And I like that they think like it's not that different, but it also is, and it's hard.
I do
I wish,
get that. I think that's really sweet because the
yeah,
mindset is like, I will love that baby like it's my own and blah, 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 blah. So I suppose when thinking of adoption, because I know friends of mine that have been adopted, I know friends that have been in the system until they were 18. It's
mhm,
really not good. It's not like over here, it's not good. The things that happen to these kids is like really messed up.
mm-mm.
So
No, like
having
my
like, yeah.
oh no, sorry, I like totally interrupted you.
No, go ahead. I'm intrigued. Carry on.
I was gonna say, yeah, the foster care system is really, really bad. Like my husband was in foster care with his siblings growing up, and it was really like bad. Like there's like
It's
stories.
bad. There's things
There's
that like we can't say on here, but like the things you watch in documentaries, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly. Like
traumatic
my
stuff.
sister, one example is my sister-in-law remembers being fed dog poop by the foster siblings and the
No,
parents
no,
watching and not doing anything about it.
no, I
So
won't accept
gross.
that. Really?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Okay. So
Like
my point
horrifying.
was that like if you can find a loving home and they just so happen to not be good with your hair and they learn over time, I have to think that we have to be a little bit more, and by we I mean me, have to be a bit more compassionate to the fact that you'd rather be in a loving home than in the system being dealt with God knows who. Do you know what I mean? And then if it's a case of like, oh, I'm having some issues with my hair, at least this lady loves me, so fine. But the thing is, like, what groups exist now? Because I'd like to know that we've passed the 90s and in 2023, everybody's very clear that the Black experience is the real thing. And I think we're all having to have a mirror to like our racial issues. Like we talk about race more than we ever have, I think, ever in life. So, like, do you know if there's any groups or like any ways that Black kids are a little bit more, I guess, I don't want to say protected because I wouldn't say it's neglect, but like cultural neglect, maybe, you know?
Yeah. There's a few different groups. Like in Utah, I will say there's a few different groups. I'll be Utah specific. We can start there.
Because that's your experience. So,
Yeah. Yeah, this is where I know the resources. So there's Transracial Adoption
yeah,
Connection, which is it's a Facebook group for transracial adoptees
yeah,
that they can go on and like talk about their experience, and parents can come on and learn.
yeah.
And then there is in Utah we have something called the Genesis Group. It is
Okay,
it's a black segment of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's an all black church group.
okay,
Um, so yeah,
okay,
yeah, it's
good.
just like an all black church, and it's a really good place because Latter Day Saints adopt a lot. I was adopted. I am a Latter Day Saint. I was adopted by Latter Day Saints,
Yeah,
and so there's a place for cultural connection to happen. That's a great support just for the kids to be able to see like other Black people, because we're so spread
yeah,
out here. There's
yeah.
also I'm trying to think where else there is. There's also a few groups through like Black Lives Matter, local Black Lives Matter. They do like
Okay,
they do like trainings and they do like mixers and activities and things for kids and adults. And it's just
Oh,
any
okay.
you can bring your Black child there, and they have activities. They allow them to make friends. They have
Aw.
I don't know what to call it, like a group meeting, like they have summer camps and stuff, and they kind of teach them things like I don't know, kind of I heard from a client that they were talking about like what you can do if you're like afraid of being pulled over and
Oh,
how you
really?
interact with a police officer and things like that and safely interact with a police officer, right?
Yeah.
Avoid confrontation and like those kind of things just to be safe.
No, I
So
love
there's
that. There's stuff going on. Okay. So
yeah, there's stuff going
in
on.
in your opinion, what would you say to a white family or a non-black family, okay, Tanisha, right now, and they're listening and they're thinking, yeah, I'm thinking of adopting. I'm thinking of adopting, and you want to tell them something that will help them and will help their child. And it doesn't have to just be hair related. What would you say?
I would say A, be prepared, but B, like start really early. I think what happens a lot of the times
Mhm.
that I've noticed, just like I'm a therapist also, just from that perspective of
Yes.
having worked with these kids and being one, is that
Yeah.
often like we don't start young enough in trying to help them understand who they are and what it means, right?
Yeah.
So like from baby, like you're talking about how beautiful they are, like you're gonna help them understand their self-worth. And then when as soon as they are socializing with other children, like make sure
Mm.
they understand, sometimes Johnny, sometimes people aren't gonna understand why your skin's brown and they might ask you, and that's okay. Right? Like helping them understand that because little kids have no
Oh,
filter. And little
no,
kids
I
always
know.
like I'm grown and little kids will still be like, I'll play with them, my friend's kids, whoever's kids, and
Yeah.
they'll just be like, so okay, like, but why are you brown? Like nobody else is brown. So
Kids
just
are
bring
demons. You
it.
don't think they're just so naive, and they're like, "Cool, I wanted to. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it,
Yeah,
Tanisha.
yeah. My
Why?
little niece actually, she's like, Nisha, why are you brown? Why are you brown? Because
You're like,
our
sit down,
whole
baby.
family, our whole family on that side is blonde hair, blue eyed. Like
Right.
my husband, like his family, all blonde hair, blue eyed.
But fair enough, because as a child, you're gonna be like,
Yeah,
and
like
I like the fact that they say something instead of like sitting there like and being awkward.
yeah, and they're not mean. Their parents are always mortified, but it's not
Yeah,
mean.
it's not
They're
mean. It's
not like
inquisitive. They just want to know.
yeah, they're like, okay, but like how and like the whole long conversation, I always am like, okay, so there's this cool place where everybody looks like me. And this cool place, I kind of skipped the slavery conversation for young ones.
I
Okay,
think
they're
fair play.
right. Like I'm just like, okay, so we
Skirt.
all of these people from over here in this country that looks like me, a lot of them came here to America, and that's how I'm here.
And that's it. And that's it. So
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
we can discuss how in the process another day. But yeah, that's the top tier.
Yeah.
You know, we came over.
Yeah.
So starting young, okay, talking to these children in a way where they don't feel afraid to have the hard conversations, and obviously as the adult framing the answers in the right way. Number
Hmm.
one. What's the next piece of advice you would give to prospective adoptive parents?
I would say, I will say, I think there is a side of this conversation that goes too far,
Okay.
where I know there's groups of adoptees, because I did my thesis actually a little bit
Oh,
on adoptive parent
yeah.
bonding with
Yeah.
adoptive parent and child bonding in
Yeah.
transracial adoptees. And what I will say, there is a side where there are some very angry adoptees for valid reasons, but I would
Yeah.
say don't let that scare you because
Yeah.
you're not going to do that. Okay. Because I interviewed people from adopted, transracial adoption started like 1940, which is before segregation was even,
I was
uh,
like, oh, that's touchy times.
yeah, right. They started allowing transracial adoption to occur before segregation was ended. You could own a Black child, you could own one, but you could not be free to be seen with one in adulthood. You could not drink from the same drinking fountain. You could not. So that's problematic, right? And there were people that are still alive from that time so it informs the time frame. We're very new in the last 30 years. The last
Yeah.
30 years is the good time, and we're still coming out of where some of the problematic things are happening, and
Yeah.
we're still evolving. So I would say don't let the experiences that you hear scare you from
Yeah.
adopting a Black child. I would say, you know, I think as long as you're educated, as long as you're willing to learn, and as
Yeah.
long as you have a Black community near you that you can connect them with, or
Yeah.
whatever race you're adopting from, actually, to
Yes.
connect with, and like create a cultivated community where they don't feel isolated from
Yeah.
people that look like them. People think that it's not that important because we're all human, but also, like, when everybody who doesn't look like you is telling you who
Yeah.
you are,
It
it's very
matters.
confusing.
Yeah.
And so that's why you want community. And I think you want someone who just can mirror, oh, like that person looks like me.
Yeah.
Um, and
It's
this is
not
how
just
it should be.
me.
Yes,
Just me
I'm
out
not
here.
alone, and it's not weird, and
Yeah.
all of those things. Because for me, I think that was a huge thing for me, is realizing, like, oh, like, I think for a long time, like, I had very few interactions with Black people until I got older,
Yeah.
because there just wasn't very many around, and the only time we saw them was once a month at the Genesis group at the church, the Black church,
Yeah.
and
I was
and
like,
so
that one time, like
yeah.
looking forward to that end of the month.
And television, right? Which is a
Yeah.
very bad place for a Black person to learn who they are. Let me tell
Yes,
you.
it is.
Because
Yes, it
Black
is.
people aren't depicted as like strong, smart, intelligent people until more recently,
Mm,
right? In the 90s,
yeah.
Black people were like, Friday was my example of, of Black people, right? Which is like, you know, we just need to understand who we are from a positive perspective,
Yeah.
and what we're capable of from a positive perspective. So I would just say, don't let that scare you. Okay, you can do it if you really have the intention of, you know, raising a child. Don't let that scare you. Just understand that part of the Black experience as it is today is
Yeah.
that they will experience racism. They will experience, and it is, I'm not saying it's okay, but like that's how it is, and it
It's
has
going to
they're
happen. I'm
going to have
sorry.
to, that's part of their life. That's the
Yeah.
child that we as Black people get to have on our shoulders. So you just have to be okay with that and understand that, like, that's what you're signing up for, is helping your child cope with that, and helping them understand, just give them a solid sense of self-esteem, so that
Yes.
when they go out into the world and experience racism, it's not a bother as much as,
Yeah.
like, we can laugh about the stupid kid on the
We can
bicycle.
kiki about the guy that basically did a hit and run on a bike and dropped the N bomb and sped off. We can laugh
Yeah.
about it because I have such a strong sense of self. But without that, you'd be sat on the street corner like, and that's the
Yeah.
thing, right? Building that sense of self up in whatever way you need to do that with your child, in whatever race they are.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I think that so many times, I think it's scary for white parents because they're like, oh no, all of this is going to come on my shoulders, and that's
Yeah.
such a huge burden to
I
bear.
know it
You
is. It
know.
is. For having to like you're doing such a good thing, but there's a lot that does come with it. But I just think
Mhm.
it's a case of, as you said, being open-minded, seeking out as much knowledge as you possibly can, and I think keeping your child at the center of things. Like, for example, I can probably picture that it wasn't the most comfortable experience for your mother being in a Black salon. You know, I can imagine that was probably really uncomfortable for that white lady, because I imagine there's a lot of white ladies that don't want to go into a Black salon. I get it. But she did because she put you at the core of it. And I think that's
Mhm.
important. You know,
Yeah.
put your discomfort aside, because it's going to be a lot of times where you're probably going to be really uncomfortable. But does it benefit the baby? If it benefits the
Mhm.
baby, you're going to have to put that pride aside and you're going to have to do it. Right?
Yeah, and be willing to learn from, and get used to the new experiences that you have. I think my mom's a real chill person, so I
Yeah.
think that also,
Helps.
like, yeah, my mom's like super chill when it comes to like new people. She like
Yeah.
doesn't get phased.
You got
She's just
lucky there.
like,
Perfect personality for this experience.
yeah, like she's a kindergarten teacher for 27 years. She just
Yeah.
like loves everything. She's like Disney happy. You know what I
Oh, I
mean?
know
Like
what
you're
you. I know exactly what you mean. That's a perfect predisposition for dealing with like the adoption of a black child and everything that comes with it. If you're already in a very like, it's okay, like we'll work through it. Then good for her. You struck gold with that because then it makes everything a little bit easier to digest, even when it's a rough time, right?
exactly, exactly. I
Amazing.
think my dad was definitely more complicated.
Sure.
Um, I think I think he did the best that he could, for a while,
Yeah.
but they're
Again,
problematic, like.
everybody's got a problematic family member,
Mhm.
parent, friend. So at least you were able to basically be developed into this wonderful woman because
Thank you.
you have your own pod as well, don't you? Because I hold on, wait for it. How fancy is this?
Oh, love it.
I know, I know. I shouldn't brag, but I think this is quite professional. So
Yes, yes.
this is how people will find you, right, Tanisha?
Yeah, this is how people will find me. Found by
Talk a little bit
Tanisha.
about your pod as well. Tell them about your podcast.
So yeah, my podcast is about like all things the trauma healing journey. And
Mm-hmm.
so I talk to, I mean, I give you tips every week, mental health tips. I'm a therapist. We kind of go over
Oh,
things that can help you.
I need
I
to
do
follow.
meditations, but then every Tuesday you get a guest interview from
Yeah.
someone that has overcome something, really cool
Mhm.
stories. You get experts on occasion. It's super cool. We've been able to talk to so many different people. I talked to someone that exited like a narcissistic relationship and now they're like a coach
Yeah.
for women leaving those relationships. I've talked to someone who's had a very deep depression experience and how she
Really?
was able to come on the other side of that. It's so fun. I love talking to
Oh,
people with survivor stories because that's
yeah.
me. I have
Yeah.
been through a lot outside of my adoption. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that went on, and
Yeah.
I think that hearing people's stories is so empowering, and so that's why I started it, and that's why I
I'm
love
going to
it.
follow it. I'm going to listen to it. Clearly, I obviously really vibe of talking to other people as well. So I
Yeah.
think I would find that fascinating. So I'm definitely going to follow it. But I'm so glad that we were able to speak today. Thank you for coming
Yeah.
and sharing your story. And guys, please make sure you go and follow her at Found by Tanisha and at Found Life Pod.
Thank
Okay?
you.
You are welcome, sis. In the meantime, guys, please tighten your bonnet, oil your scalp, and so extra.
Get that spray bottle.
Yes, with a spray bottle, please. And protect your edges. And I will speak to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.